Today on Fear and Greed, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has told the country to take a chill pill when it comes to Donald Trump, with the US president's proposal for America to take over Gaza getting different responses from local leaders. Business confidence picks up as the outlook for interest rates improves, and Tasmania turns out to be the healthiest place in the country to live. Plus, the RAV4 takes the top spot in car sales, and American football is coming to the MCG. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Friday, the 7th of February 2025. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has basically said that Australians need to take a chill pill when it comes to Donald Trump and not react to every statement that he makes.
Maybe, but isn't he the President of the United States?
If we can't react to the President of the United States statements, then whose statements can we react to?
Mr. Albanese said that we need to sit back and not react to everything he says. The Prime Minister and government ministers have been dodging questions on Trump's changing policy decisions for days. On ABC News Breakfast yesterday, Mr. Albanese said, I'm going to quote him, "There's been two different positions in the last week on Canada and on tariffs, and that points towards the need to sit back and not comment on every statement that is made every day." Well, really, Mr. Prime Minister, given he is the President of the US, Mr. Albanese stood firm on Australia's long-running position for a bipartisan two-state solution in the Middle East. Earlier in the week, Donald Trump suggested that the US take over Gaza and shift Palestinians to other countries, caused global outrage. And in the last 24 hours, lots of global leaders have come out and said, no, we disagree with that, not least those countries who Mr. Trump expects to take the Palestinians.
Yeah, and Peter Dutton has had a different response to the proposal. He said Donald Trump, this is a quote, has a very different approach than his predecessors. He has a business approach. And then he added that if we can see a plan that has peace and stability restored to the region, then would I support that? So he's clearly
equivocating.
Yes. Yeah, it appears to be the case. But I'm a little bit kind of wary of this idea that we shouldn't be reacting and commenting on what the President of the United States says, because otherwise it does have that feel of you have to wait until there is a final policy or a final decision that's been made, and it's just not the way it works, is it?
No. And yesterday, after Donald Trump had made his comments about Gaza, the White House did a lot of work to try and draw him back from it, or at least draw the public opinion back from what he actually said. Funny times, Michael. Funny times.
I think that sums it up very, very well. I'll be interested to see how that appears on the transcript of this podcast, Sean. Locally, much exciting happened yesterday in Question Time?
Well, Peter Dutton and the opposition are still very much focusing on anti-Semitism and when the Prime Minister did or didn't know about a caravan full of explosives in northwest Sydney. That was found by the Australian Federal Police. When the Prime Minister knew about that, vis-a-vis when the Premier of New South Wales, Chris Minns, knew about that, seems to be a point of attack from the opposition. One thing they did do yesterday, the opposition, is push a little bit more into the cost of living debate. Now, in the newsletter this week, we talked about the fact that the opposition hasn't really pushed the cost of living too hard. And it's the political cycle is working against the opposition on this one because the cost of living is actually improving. And interestingly, yesterday in Question Time, they did push into that just a little bit more.
And just before we leave politics, Sean, New South Wales has passed expanded anti-vilification and intimidation laws on the back of a spate of hate crimes targeting Jewish communities, though the new laws could soon be superseded by federal laws that passed the Senate yesterday. Perpetrators of anti-Semitic crimes in New South Wales can face up to 2 years in jail. This is a whole new package of laws that's aimed at stamping out racially and religiously motivated violence. The changes include a new criminal offence for intentionally inciting racial hatred with a proposed maximum penalty of 2 years behind bars. It was interesting to hear Premier Chris Minns talking about it. He said New South Wales could not wait for federal laws, even though that new hate speech legislation was set to pass Parliament in Canberra and pass the Senate yesterday. That legislation is set to include mandatory minimum sentences for hate speech. There is a lot of action quite quickly now on this one, Sean.
Yeah, there's also a lot of angst in the Labor Party about the mandatory minimum sentences. So Kim Carr, a former federal politician, came out against the idea that Labor would include mandatory minimum sentences for hate speech. It's not a philosophy that Labor has ever followed, but I think the government felt it needed to do it. Interestingly, Chris Minns yesterday, the New South Wales Premier, came out and said basically whichever legislation was tougher would be applied to anyone caught vilifying or intimidating people.
Turning away from politics now, Sean, to a bit of economics.
Ah,
I can
love
see
that.
you relaxed into that as soon as I said that. You're like, here we go.
Something I know about.
Business confidence, Sean, is up a bit. And business conditions remain stable, though corporates are more upbeat about the next 12 months compared to the last 12 months.
That's right. That's the finding from the National Australia Bank Business Confidence and Business Conditions Survey for the December quarter. Conditions were steady last quarter, but significantly, business expects better times in 2025. They expect to make bigger investments. That's very good for the economy. That reflects hopes of lower interest rates, recovering consumer demand, easing cost growth. Also, there's an improvement in medium to long-term inflation expectations. The big thing for businesses still is wages, though. They're worried about wage costs growing too fast. But otherwise, they're kind of okay with what's going on in the economy. It's good news because we need business to be confident. We need them to invest. They think the next 12 months will be better than the last 12 months. Therefore, they'll invest more. That actually creates jobs. Now, we're seeing it in the share market. A strong day yesterday, the share market. We'll come to that a bit later. But we're also seeing it among small businesses. And of course, small business is the lifeblood of this economy. So good news all round.
Yeah, certainly is. All right, we've got a lot still to come, Sean. We're talking about the RAV4. We're talking about the NFL games at the MCG and why the whole country should move to Tasmania. I love that story. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Rio Tinto is looking at green energy for its massive aluminium smelter in Queensland, increasingly confident that batteries can provide a solution to the intermittency of renewables.
Okay, I get this is an inside baseball story. It might seem a little bit inconsequential to some people. But Michael, this is big, big news. In fact, I might even grab this as a sleeper story for the weekend edition. Seriously.
Oh, that's a big call. Though having said that, Adam Lang, who judges our competition on the weekend edition, will hear you say that. And you've kind of warned him. So he's not going to be surprised when you bust it out in the weekend edition tomorrow.
Yeah. So the deal with this.
Tactical mistake.
Error? Yes, error. The deal here, aluminium smelters, they use massive amounts of energy. In fact, they're one of the most energy-intensive industrial processes around. Smelters run 24 hours a day. Renewables struggle to provide consistent energy. Hard to get solar energy when the sun's not up, isn't it? Rio is now saying the falling cost of batteries and an improved ability to store energy means that maybe, via better use of batteries, these smelters can run 24 hours a day on green energy. The batteries, they call it firming power. It's basically batteries kick in when solar and wind are at low ebbs, then you use the battery power. If you can do this at smelters, and this is why this is exciting, this is why it's consequential. If you can do it at something like a smelter, which uses a massive amount of energy, it suggests that you can do it at other places. Rio has never spoken about this, about the idea of using green energy 24/7 at aluminium smelters until yesterday. Big deal.
That is a terrific story, Sean.
It is a terrific story. I agree.
I will not admit that again.
Right.
Especially not in the weekend edition tomorrow.
No.
I will concede. Great story. Online property group REA has kicked off earnings season, announcing a 26% jump in profit, triggering a 3% rise in its share price.
REA is controlled by News Corporation. It's the largest property listings platform in the country. Its share price is up 13% in just 3 weeks, 35% in 5 months. That's after it walked away from a bid for a UK property group. Basically, the last 6 months or so, plenty of listings. They've been able to charge good money for those. Sales volumes across the sector is pretty good, and buyers are benefiting from moderation in price growth. So for a company like REA or Domain, it's not so much about whether prices are going up or down. It's just that places are selling, because when people are selling a place, they take out ads in REA or Domain. That's how they make their money. The boss of REA, a guy called Owen Wilson, he's been there for 6 years. He also announced yesterday that he'll be stepping down, and he's leaving at a time when the business is doing very well.
You mentioned News Corporation there. The jump in REA's revenue and profit helped News Corp's overall result.
Sure did. News Corp's share price was up 5% yesterday on the ASX, best of the top 200. The media conglomerate reported an increase in revenue and in earnings. It owns a big chunk of REA. It also owns the Australian here. It owns the Times of London, Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones. Currently, it owns Foxtel and HarperCollins, though at the moment it is selling that in those two businesses in a $3.4 billion deal.
What about the rest of the market? Much happened yesterday?
Not sure what to make of this one, Michael. But the fact that Donald Trump, in that 24-hour period, took an interest in the Middle East and Gaza and did not speak about tariffs, that was enough to push the local share market higher. If you ever want an example of a skittish share market, the fact that the president doesn't speak about something is a great example.
That's fantastic. So yeah. Markets took a chill pill.
They did. They were listening to the Prime Minister. You're right. The market itself finished up more than 1%. Interest rate sensitive stocks did best. Wesfarmers was one of the best. It was up 3%. The banks also did really well. Commonwealth Bank, NAB, Westpac, ANZ, all up at least 2%, somewhere 2 to 2.5%.
And what's happening in international markets, Sean?
Gold sitting around $28.70 an ounce. Oil has come off again after Donald Trump downplayed earlier comments that he wanted to blow Iran to smithereens. So that's what he actually said. Then he downplayed it. Apparently he doesn't want to blow up Iran or blow Iran to smithereens. That helped oil prices. There's something called the Bloomberg Commodity Total Return Index, a bit of a mouthful. It's a basket of 24 energy, metals and agricultural futures. It's up 6% this year, highest since 2022. Basically, gold prices, coffee beans, high corn and soybean prices have all pushed this index of soft and hard commodities higher. And it just suggests that the outlook for commodities is good. That's a good thing for Australia.
And Sean, I mentioned earlier the Toyota RAV4 and the fact that it has knocked off the tradies' friends, the Ford Ranger Ute and the Toyota Hilux, to now be the highest selling car in the country. And the thing that really got me from these figures is that EV sales are at their lowest as a proportion of new cars purchased in more than 2 years. It shows how hybrids are now the environmentally aware car of choice. In January, hybrids were 17% of cars sold. EVs, right, just 4.4% of total sales. This is according to the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries. Total new vehicle sales last month of just under 87,000. That's down from a year ago. For the month, the biggest manufacturers, Toyota, Mazda, Ford, Kia, and Mitsubishi.
It still surprises me that you never see Holden on the list. I mean, in 2021, the brand was retired from Australia, so they don't make Holdens anymore. But, you know, it's hard when you've lived in Australia for... Some of us are old, even you, Michael. You know...
You miss it.
You do. Was it football, meat pies and Holden cars? They were the three
you
great
actually
Australian
miss
icons.
It.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Can we talk about Tasmania?
Yes. I know you like the story.
I love it. I think this is fascinating that Tasmania, perhaps unsurprisingly, has emerged as the healthiest place to live in the country with lower environmental risks. I would understand that. Better climate conditions resulting in a lower mortality rate compared to other places around the country.
The study by public health researchers at Monash University, reported in the Fin Review, looked at 2,000 cities and towns and suburbs across the nation, combined data on a dozen different factors contributing to health. So things like air quality, access to green spaces, temperature, socioeconomic factors, as well as things like cardiovascular disease and other indicators. Tasmania came out on top. Darwin actually was at the bottom of the Environmental Quality Health Index. That was mostly due to extreme heat and low incomes. After Hobart, we had Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, and Canberra, and that was in order. Generally, rural areas fared worse than urban areas. It's the second time this study's been done, and what it does show, even though Darwin's at the bottom of the heap, it's improving, as is Perth, whereas the other cities aren't. They're going the wrong way.
Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen has confirmed the state will host National Football League games, American football, with the first game held next year at the MCG. That is going to be a heck of a spectacle.
There were an average of 20 million Americans tuned into each NFL game last year. And then there's
average.
There's millions of other international viewers, but just US, 20 million on average.
That is a lot of people. If you get 2 million people tuning into something in Australia, that's considered a success.
Well, the AFL Grand Final and State of Origin, that's the sort of numbers you're talking about there, and they're the biggest games of the year. So crazy.
Those are staggering figures.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Rams will be the MCG's host team. The games will be part of the NFL's regular season. The contract with the NFL is for 2 games with an option for the third. Now, Jacinta Allen said the multi-year deal was another touchdown for the sporting capital of Australia. There you go. But she wouldn't comment on the price of the deal, said it was commercial in confidence. But American football is coming to the G.
Immediately after the show, Sean, good timing for this conversation, you're speaking with Ben Willey from Spinach Advertising.
Yeah, it is very timely because, of course, the Super Bowl is on Monday morning our time. So we talked to Ben all about the, I think, $7 million 30-second spots in the Super Bowl. We also talked to him about Sam Kerr and her earning potential, given the furore that's going on in the UK at the moment. And he is very upfront about what this means for Sam Kerr, and it ain't great news. Well worth a listen.
Yeah, indeed. It's coming up after the show, so stick around for that one. Turning to international news now. Last month, Sean, was the hottest January on record, surprising scientists who actually expected the cooling La Nina weather cycle in the tropical Pacific to slow almost 2 years of record high temperatures.
January ranked as the third hottest month globally on record, with a surface air temperature of 13.23 degrees Celsius, 1.75 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial average, according to the Copernicus Climate Change Service. That's the EU's Earth Observation Agency. The warming is set to fuel concerns that climate change is accelerating at a time when countries such as the US pull back on commitments to reduce emissions. Emeritus Professor of Geophysical and Climate Hazards at UCL, Bill Maguire, said the data was, I quote, both astonishing and, frankly, terrifying. On the basis of the Valencia floods and the apocalyptic Los Angeles wildfires, I don't think there can be any doubt that dangerous or pervasive climate breakdown has arrived.
Global consulting firm McKinsey is considering withdrawing from China, worried that doing business there isn't worth the risk given the tense relationship between Washington and Beijing.
Interesting, this one. Some senior partners at McKinsey have been voicing concerns since late last year, even before Donald Trump was re-elected. According to Bloomberg, the lucrative North American business, they argue, can more than offset a China retreat. Currently, McKinsey has offices in 130 cities, 65 countries. It has a stated goal to expand, not shrink. If you take a bigger look here, Joe, a record number of US companies in China, about 30%, are thinking of moving some operations out of the country or already doing so, according to a survey from the Australian Chamber of Commerce in China. It just demonstrates how what's happening at the political level affects businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick update on a story that we talked about yesterday, Sean. The US Postal Service has backflipped on a plan not to accept parcels from China and Hong Kong. The confusion is over duties that need to be paid on all parcels, big and small, after Donald Trump upped tariffs on Chinese goods by 10%. Bit of an update there.
I think that we're talking about 1.5 million parcels every day not being. I reckon you'd have to backflip on that one.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, just the backlog would be catastrophic. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Ben Willey from Spinach Advertising. It is coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. And keep an eye on your playlist as well. At midday today, a new episode of Ask Fear and Greed where we answer listener questions. And please, if you have your own questions that you would like us to answer, it can be anything to do with business or the economy or anything at all, actually, relationship advice, perhaps we can venture into that space. Send it on through via the website, fearandgreed.com.au or any of the social media platforms. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 7th of February, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.